Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid at our special time, noon Eastern. I guess you could call this our Super Bowl week edition of NewsWire. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Craig Mish here in South Florida while our entire crew is busy at work getting you ready for the upcoming Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Our coverage continues throughout the day right here on SportsGrid. Thanks so much for tuning in. We got Vinnie Iyer coming up from Sporting News. We'll break down the very latest happening, of course, with the Super Bowl odds as we get ready for Sunday. Our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report will also be with us as well. And coming up a little bit later, my buddy Larry Krueger, who's been in the sports media for, I don't know, feels like 30, I don't want to say that long, maybe 20, 30 years covering in sports radio in the Bay Area, is going to tell us everything that's going on right now with the San Francisco 49ers. So stay with us here on the grid. I think we got a fun show for you here on the Super Bowl edition. Let's get started with the very latest. And again, we're bouncing around here from the NFL to the NBA to everything else. We'll start off with Joel Embiid. And it looks like 65 games is going to be a very big stretch. Is that fair to say for Joel Embiid to qualify for the MVP? We found out that there was no salaciousness. Embiid genuinely hurt, going to undergo a procedure to repair his left meniscus and will miss an extended period of time, which brings a lot more questions than answers with players who actually are hurt and only end up playing 50-some-odd games, because it looks like that's the projection right now for Embiid. He is out and going to be out of the Sixers lineup indefinitely. Now, never want to see this the week of the Super Bowl, although I guess you could say it did happen over the weekend, but Patrick Mahomes Sr., former big league pitcher with the Minnesota Twins, and of course the father of Patrick Mahomes, arrested for a DWI Saturday night for the third time. My goodness, by Texas law, this could mean he potentially faces 2 to 10 years in prison. Not the distraction that anybody needs, and hopefully Patrick Mahomes Sr. can get himself right and get himself healthy. As far as all of the bets coming in on the Super Bowl in the National Football League, a lot of them are on the Kansas City Chiefs money line at the moment. They are plus 110 over on BetMGM. That's where the money is headed. Now, as far as Cliff Kingsbury, where is he headed? When we left you over the weekend, it did not appear that he was going to be the next offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders, but yet here we are, as he basically decided to go there at the last minute, and he reunites, of course, with Dan Quinn, could potentially reunite with quarterback Caleb Williams, who, of course, he had in college. Still remains to be seen. Cliff taking, of course, some time off from being the head coach as the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL. Now he's back from college. The Cleveland Browns have hired one of their former quarterbacks, Ken Dorsey, of course, former quarterback also at the University of Miami, spent time as the OC with the Buffalo Bills. And the Dolphins go to the Baltimore Ravens for their next defensive coordinator. They have hired Anthony Weaver. He has been there since the 2021 NFL season. Bill Belichick, still no gig right now, and maybe does some media. Who really knows what he's going to do this upcoming football season, because all those gigs are taken. So his son, Steve Belichick, has decided to take his talents, so to speak, to Washington. He's going to be the Huskies defensive coordinator. 12 seasons in the NFL with the Patriots, called defensive plays the last 5 seasons, headed to Washington. And if I'm not mistaken, Jed Fish, the new head coach there. Michigan has promoted quarterbacks coach Kirk Campbell to their offensive coordinator, with Sharon Moore taking the head coaching position there. Spencer Rattler, in case you missed it over the weekend, he was named the Senior Bowl MVP. The national team defeated the American team 16-7. He threw for 65 yards in that game. And number 6 recruit Naeem Offord has committed to Ohio State. He's the number 6 ranked prospect in the upcoming 2025 class. He is a cornerback, 6'2", 185 pounds. He picked Ohio State over Alabama. All right, in the NBA, not great news for Zach LaVine. He's going to miss the rest of the season, undergoing foot surgery. Hasn't played since January 18th. It healed and then sidelined again with discomfort. He's missed 17 games already this season, but a huge blow to the Chicago Bulls and the rest of their campaign. Caitlin Clark, 66 points now from clinching the all-time scoring record. On Saturday night, she had 38 points, 12 assists, and is closing in on, let's be honest, being the best college basketball player on the women's side of all time. How about Bradley Beal? He comes back with a bounce. 43 points in his return to the place where he played for many years in Washington in their 140-112 win on Sunday. No, I did not say that wrong. 140 points for the Phoenix Suns. And also Doc Rivers has been named the East coach for the All-Star game. Bucks beat the Mavericks 129-117. All right, Pebble Beach, they could not finish this tournament. That's sort of crazy. In California, too. After the fourth round has been canceled, Wyndham Clark, he's the winner. So go figure, 17 under par. He ends up winning the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, and they just couldn't finish. Scotty Scheffler, by the way, finished tied for sixth at 13 under. And tomorrow on the show, we'll talk more about Brady Kennan, sort of how that affects wagering and how that affects the kind of the finish there. But never want to see this in a golf tournament, but they had no choice. FIFA World Cup, they make the announcement official in 2026. The World Cup final is in the United States, and it's going to be held at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. So they get the final there. I know Hard Rock Stadium in South Florida is going to get some rounds as well. The World Cup in the U.S. in 2026. Crazy story here. A man has been sentenced for 12 years in federal prison for this fraud scheme where he was impersonating Marcus Smart of the NBA and also an executive as well in the NFL. Hundreds of millions of dollars, by the way, throughout this fraudulent billing of insurance companies. And good news for the New Jersey Devils is Jack Hughes is getting ready to return. He has not played since suffering an upper body injury on January the 5th. All right, for those of you who are tuning in for our Super Bowl coverage this week, let me give you the best way to follow us all week long. Social media, of course, great place. At SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV, Rebecca and her team sending out all kinds of videos and messages, and all the hosts I see are already on social media as well. But let me give you one further. Download our SportsGrid app, because this is how you can follow all of the shows, all of the current odds, news, notes, information. By the way, that QR code that you see right there on your screen, it is available for iOS and for Android users. So any phone that you have, unless it's like a BlackBerry, I don't think anybody's using those anymore, you can scan the code. I had a BlackBerry. This is true. I had a BlackBerry once upon a time. You could scan the QR code, get you all set up for the week of coverage here, which really, Radio Row, everything going on at Mandalay Bay, starting tomorrow is really I've covered many, many Super Bowls, is really the big, big day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of Super Bowl week. Okay, you know who else is covering the Super Bowl? It's Vinnie Iyer. He's going to join us next. Coming up, we'll talk about some of the moves in the NFL. We'll talk a little NFL draft and also what the landscape for the Washington Commanders looks like with a new head coach, Dan Quinn, new offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. Also, as I mentioned, Mike Mazzeo from Legal Sports Report is going to join us. I don't know if you followed this story about the man who was trying to get down bets in college baseball at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. We have an update on that as well. So stay with us here on the grid. We are off and running here on this Monday, our first Super Bowl edition of NewsWire, and we'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
Not scoring 2 in this game. Should get 1 because he always does. 2 is a lot, and there's a reason why his 2+ is plus 260.
So those are the best bets to make, in my opinion, are the ones where the public might be going the opposite direction, driving the line in a certain way, and you can come back with bigger money at more books later in the week.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
To the big news here. A big push for Georgia to get things going as far as legalized sports betting. And Pat, I don't want to get people too excited. It's not like this is happening this year.
The Senate version and the House version, and then they're going to have to get a couple of people from each chamber together and kind of wrestle out the details of what exactly sports betting in Georgia might look like.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
the fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco. I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy
The early line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live. Prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We
for
did.
patient, didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Throughout the years in the National Football League, once we get to Super Bowl week, the one thing that you always hear the coaches say first, above everything else, I don't know, Vinnie Iyer is going to agree with me here. I know he's going to, is that we don't want any distractions. That's number one. Everything else is like, oh, there's going to be this and that and the hoopla. We don't want any distractions. And Vinnie, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction here. Patrick Mahomes Sr., pitcher in Major League Baseball, very good one, by the way, Mets, Twins, father of Patrick Mahomes, arrested for a DWI for the third time. Now, this is the kind of stuff that we're not supposed to get, right? Like the distractions. We shouldn't even be talking about this on the Monday of the Super Bowl. I would assume that this will not affect the Super Bowl whatsoever. But Vinny, how long have you been watching the Super Bowls where something like this happens and then the game happens? We're like, oh, well, that's the reason why, right? Like, I don't think this affects anything. It's just an unnecessary thing. And by the way, very unfortunate. Clearly, Patrick Mahomes Sr. has a problem, right? Like, this isn't just something that's just a random issue, it would appear.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And look, he's going to have to field some questions about it. Patrick Mahomes himself here at the Super Bowl, and it's going to come up. It'll probably be a quick answer and move on, right? And try to get to breaking down the 49ers or what most people want to know about this week. It's unfortunate because there's a lot of good vibes around Patrick Mahomes as he tries to win his third Super Bowl. And look, we know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that he's built from a different cloth here, maybe with his mom's influence and all that. So I don't know if it's going to be a big deal going forward, but Patrick Mahomes is going to have to deal with questions with that. Let's hope for just maybe one or two times and he can move on.
Yeah, a tough one. That's a good point about his brother. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things that I don't want to be sitting here next week, Monday, Vinny, with you talking about that was the reason why they lost the Super Bowl. That's not something that I want to do. Okay, so what's going on with Cliff Kingsbury here? It seems like a last-minute pivot for him from offensive coordinators. He's bounced around, let's be honest, college, pro, different places. He's landed now, though, late yesterday, on the Washington Commanders. Is there something to this? More money, better situation? I'm not following as closely why Kingsbury inevitably has chosen Washington here.
Well, let's remember the first time he was hired in the NFL as a head coach, right out of college. What was the reason? Attaching to a quarterback immediately there with Kyler Murray. So Did he talk to the Commanders and Raiders and one had a better plan to possibly moving up to number one if needed, or the Commanders possibly could stay put at number two and have an easier path at getting Caleb Williams, whom he coached at USC? We know all this connection between that style of offense and Lincoln Riley and going into what we have with Kyler Murray. So there's always some dot connecting there with these offenses and why this was a bit of a battle, right, between two teams to land him. So maybe the Commanders could pitch easily that we're in better position to go get Caleb Williams for you. We can kind of just figure out a way to move up one spot while the Raiders might be out of luck, right, trying to move up that far. Now, the interesting thing that comes into play, the Raiders could still affect things here because you have them hiring Luke Getsy because they couldn't get Kingsbury. He was attached to Justin Fields. Did they make a play here? So that number one pick with the Bears, there's so many ranges of outcomes that can happen there. But I guarantee you now, if the Commanders sit at number two, he's a DC native. Caleb Williams will be in Washington with Cliff Kingsbury. So we'll see how it plays out if that quarterback doesn't go number one to the Bears.
Yeah, and you see the draft pick order there, as you mentioned. Chicago with 1, Washington 2, and then the New England Patriots have the 3rd pick in the NFL draft, and I think that's the next place we should go here because the Patriots certainly have had a whirlwind of an offseason. We found out Bill Belichick's son took the job at the University of Washington, which to me, Vinny, is like the final signal of, my pops ain't coaching this year because I'm assuming if he was, his son would have went with him. And honestly, like I don't know the merits of Steve Belichick because it's sort of hard to tell because Bill Belichick was a great defensive coach too. New England's defense never a problem, so he goes there. Bill Belichick goes nowhere, Vinny. So like, what is he doing here? Like he's going to take a year off? Do the media? Like I don't even know. Like I know I'll see him in spring training in Jupiter with his boat hanging out. His wife's got a nice little shop on Jupiter Island. I always see him there. But beyond that, this was the coaching cycle, Vinny, to get hired. There was like 1 million coaches let go.
Yeah, I think the situations just didn't work out, right? Either he was looking for maybe too much power or had to take on too much of a workload, right? And had to get some things done to turn a team into a team that was going to win some games for him. And ultimately, that's what he's trying to do, win games as quickly as possible here. He's turning 72. We mentioned before about the record sitting out there. He's got to pass 2 more coaches, George Halas, Don Shula, to be the all-time winningest coach. You're not going to do that necessarily with a rebuilding team, right? The Chargers had the best situation by far because they had Justin Herbert, the quickest path to maybe getting wins. But the rest of these situations, there was uncertainty about the quarterback. You got to rebuild different parts of the roster. Is that team patient enough? Probably not, right? To see if he's going to stick around for 3 or 4 more years to get that done. Now, Bill Belichick, I think his best bet, if the Eagles and Cowboys get frustrated again in the playoffs, those teams have an easier path to big winnings and getting to a Super Bowl. So look at that. I think it has to be that path. And I think it's going to play out a lot like Tom Brady. He kind of handpicked the team that he thought had some upside to get there and kind of pad his numbers here. I think it's going to be the same for Belichick. And I think Cowboys or Eagles, I think they'll be ready on standby if they flop again in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think so too. So Vinny, are you on again this week with me, or this is the lone appearance? Are you on again Friday?
They tell me I might be, so I could be back. So,
well, I'm not going with a might. I'm looking for a pick. Okay, Vinny, you promised
me. I'll give you the pick.
Time...
I got the pick locked in. It doesn't matter.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah,
give it to me now.
I like the game to go over and the Chiefs by a field goal. That's how I'm going to go in this one.
Which one you like
look
more?
At this. I'm going to say I like the Chiefs by a field goal a lot more because the Chiefs defense could have a big impact on the total in this one. I think Brock Purdy could struggle a little bit with the pressure. He's a downfield passer. They're great in downfield pass coverage. They can get to him inside or outside. So I think that is going to be the bigger issue. I think the only way the 49ers can win this game if they can get a big game out of Christian McCaffrey, really protect their defense, because I think their defense also has some weaknesses against the run, against the tight end that the Chiefs would figure to exploit based on how they've operated their offense in the playoffs so far with Patrick Mahomes.
All right, fair enough. We're out of time here, so we don't have any time, Vinny, for the Pro Bowl conversation. I'm sorry we ran out of time here. I know it was really something to to get into here on the show. Maybe we'll do that on Friday if you come back on.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll maybe get next year's odds. Get on that right away, NFC or AFC.
I mean, that maybe I'd rather talk about XFL, USFL than the Pro Bowl. That's like the only thing I'd maybe pivot to, because that's at the bottom of my list too. Anyway, Vinny, enjoy the hoopla from the week, and maybe we'll see you later this week. If not, enjoy the big game on Sunday. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire. Good to see you.
Great. All right, thanks, Craig.
All right, Vinnie Iyer, Sporting News. Follow him on social media and all of his columns over at sportingnews.com. All right, coming up next, our friend Mike Mazzeo from Legal Sports Report is in the studio. Tons of discussion about the wagering stances, how the NFL has like sort of pivoted. Kind of incredible to see where we were 10 years ago and how the NFL felt about sports betting. And by the way, about fantasy football too. Remember they canceled players from going to a convention several years ago too? Crazy how they've changed. We'll get into that next with Mike Mazzeo from Legal Sports Report. So stay with us here on this afternoon edition of NewsWire, and we'll be back right after this.
McCaffrey's not scoring 2 in this game. I should get 1 because he always does. 2 is a lot, and there's a reason why. His 2+ is plus 260.
So those are the best bets to make, in my opinion, are the ones where the public might be going the opposite direction, driving the line in a certain way, and you can come back with bigger money at more books later in the week.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
To the big news here. A big push for Georgia to get things going as far as legalized sports betting. And Pat, I don't want to get people too excited. It's not like this is happening this year.
The Senate version and the House version, and then they're going to have to get a couple of people from each chamber together and kind of wrestle out the details of what exactly sports betting in Georgia might look like.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy
The early
race
line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterback,
Pharrell
backup quarterback.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
You
decisions.
have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was good
Late
betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We
for
did.
information, didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Mike Mazzeo's in our New York studios, ready to go over the latest in sports wagering across the country. Of course, always some controversies going on, and an interesting discussion, by the way, with the NFL and their stance, how it has changed on sports wagering. So let's bring Mike in for our Monday edition. Mike, thanks for popping in here on the show a little bit later than usual. Appreciate you making the appearance.
Absolutely, Craig. Anytime. Yeah, excited for Super Bowl week here. Loved your first update about Jack Hughes. Glad he's coming back to the Devils. And busy week for us at Legal Sports Report, given there's a filing coming up from Wes Flagler, by Wednesday's deadline with SCOTUS. Yeah. So that Supreme Court case could kind of begin to take shape if it ever gets there. But obviously, it's Super Bowl week, and all eyes will be on Roger Goodell tonight as he has his press conference.
Yeah, tonight is the night for Roger Goodell, and then Media Day tomorrow, and all the stuff that comes with it. Okay, so our first story here is a dial back to last year where a man was betting on, or attempted to make bets on a college baseball game, just some random guy in Cincinnati, Ohio, who shows up to bet because he thinks he has an edge after hearing from one of the coaches in a college basketball game, or college baseball game, regarding the University of Alabama. Now, my understanding with the story is that the guilty plea for these charges is just simply obstruction in the NCAA betting scandal. So what about actually, though, like attempting to make the bets and all that? Is that not part of this? It's just he's being charged with obstruction of justice, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, Craig, this kind of just all stems back to the fact that he ended up getting caught because it was on video at the BetMGM Sportsbook at Great American Ballpark. He attempted to place a $100,000 wager, was really foolish about the way he went about it. He told the ticket taker, hey, if you only knew what I knew, you'd be making this bet too. And so they ended up limiting him to $15,000. And why he's charged and faces up to 10 years in prison is because he destroyed his cell phone, I believe. He told people to delete their Signal app because that's how he and Brad Bohannon, the Alabama coach, that was fired amid this probe into this sports betting allegation, had used Signal, and they were able to catch him on video, which is incredible because it's an encrypted messaging app. But he was so blatant, Burt Neff was, about this, that he's facing up to 10 years in prison, up to a $250,000 fine. Bohannon got, I believe, a 5-year NCAA baseball ban as part of a 15-year show cause order. He was ordered to pay a fine, go through 3 years of probation. So nothing good happened here, right? They tried to get an edge. The coach said, hammer this bet. Starting pitcher's going to be out. Let me know when I can tell LSU on this Alabama-LSU baseball game. It blew up in everybody's face. And hopefully, if you're in sports, you're watching what's going on here. This is something you cannot do, right? You can't give inside information as a coach to a bettor. And as a bettor, if you're going to bet $100,000, you probably shouldn't be at a baseball stadium with tons of cameras on, telling everybody what kind of information you have and how stupid they are. They aren't making the same bet as you. I mean, this was just the most poorly planned attempt at, nefarious activity perhaps ever. I mean, definitely in sports betting. I mean, my goodness, how blatant can you be? And, the punishment seems to fit the crime here, and he's pleading guilty, so he definitely did it. And it was on camera, for God's sakes. So, yeah, these guys, showing everyone what not to do.
Yeah, I mean, obstruction, generally speaking, is not going to, ruin this guy's life. But essentially, I don't know if he's going to spend any time in jail, basically, is what I'm saying from this. But I probably should dial back. It may ruin his life from doing anything professionally again. But the obstruction, a lot different than like illegal sports betting. There's no question about that. All right, so speaking of which, we've legalized sports betting here in the United States several years ago, and the NFL at the time was like, whoa, this is going to be bad. It's not a good idea. We're against this. I'll never forget, I think I was working at SiriusXM at the time. Tony Romo was going to a fantasy football event. They're like, are you nuts? You can't go to that. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh no, we love sports betting. And it's great. And the commissioner's partnering up with all of these, different companies, which by the way is the right move. It's totally cool. Now that it is, it's just so insane how they've done a 180 on this stuff.
Yeah, Craig, it's incredible. I mean, you look back to those Goodell quotes in 2012, basically saying, we can't have gambling. It's a threat on our integrity. Now they're taking the $1 billion from FanDuel, DraftKings, and Caesars, part of their tri-exclusive agreement over 5 years. So they're getting $200 million a year from these companies as part of a sports betting partnership. And now everything is, we have to protect the integrity. We have to protect the integrity. And so I asked an NFL rep during the NFL's call last week, how much of this $1 billion and whatever else you're getting in terms of sports betting partnerships had to do with Goodell's change in stance. And of course they said, oh, we're not going to put a number on it. We're not going to put a number on how much we make every year, profit from betting. This is about, legalization, the fall of PASPA. We had to change because the world changed. Okay, that's fine. They want to say that, but obviously money is a huge factor in this thing. And so, obviously it's good they have the education, the awareness. They're, engaged in the legal market. They want to eliminate the offshore market, which is an extremely difficult challenge, as we've seen. But they would like to do that, and they want to have consumer protections, which is good. But at the same time, Craig, it just feels like this is money, money, money. That's why they decided to change their stance, which is fine. It just would be better, I think, if they were transparent about it. They've tried to, give you different excuses as to why they got into this whole thing. But it was the pandemic. It's probably a tough challenge. They didn't have fans in the stadiums. This was the economic windfall they were able to get, and that's fine. But I think just be honest about it, open with it. They've been transparent about the player, suspensions, which is good, right? They said we've increased discipline. For betting on their own team, I think they went from 1 year suspension to 2 year suspension. So, these deterrents, they hope, well, they had 10 suspensions for 2022 investigations last year. They hope by this summer, when all those investigations came out last year, that number goes down. Hopefully it's 0 if it's not 1 or 2, because you're always going to be somebody who potentially breaks the rules. But they hope the rules are in place where players are now getting educated, understand you can't bet, at your practice facility, right on you can bet outside of it. Some of these rules, okay, are they good? Are they bad? Who knows? But that's what the rules are. The players should be aware of them by now, the staffers, and you hope you don't have any of these Jaguars incidents where some employees stealing $20 million to bet on FanDuel under your nose. And hopefully these rules are in place. People understand what's going on. But yeah, you just take whatever Goodell says tonight about it for what it's worth, because I'm sure he's not going to fess up to why it's really happening. But again, good that the NFL is at least engaged in this. They do care about responsible gaming, which is really good. And we'll see where it goes from here. It's certainly not going away anytime soon, and they're having the game in Vegas.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, by the way. I don't expect you to know and talk about it for a few minutes, but I did see this morning. You mentioned the Jaguars. That the Jaguars, is it right? They asked FanDuel back for all the money that their employee bet or something. Like, what are they thinking? Like, they get the money back that this rogue employee bet on all this stuff. Did you see that?
I did, yeah. That was the story you and I talked about on the show, right? Amit Patel. This guy is going to go down in infamy for, stealing $22 million, I think it was. I think he lost $20 million at FanDuel and $1 million at DraftKings betting daily fantasy, mostly, and then some sports betting because it was obviously illegal in Florida at the time he was doing it.
Right.
And so the Jaguars said, yeah, can we get our money back? And FanDuel at this point said, no, maybe there'll be a settlement. But, I talked to one of our gaming analysts, John Holden, who said, as long as they followed AML rules, they shouldn't be subject to anything. They don't owe anybody anything. Whether you can talk about the fact that, did this guy even have this money, right? Did they go in and check to make sure he was good for this money and what he did? And his job probably didn't equate to $20 million. And should they have taken the $20 million, let him keep betting? Those are questions that maybe need to be answered as well. It's a very nuanced discussion. Certainly it's understandable. FanDuel would say, well, your employee, bet with the money. We didn't know where it came from. But I think, again, certainly a lot to come from this. But yeah, that's incredible. That is like the story of the year, as you and I talked about on the show. Just that somebody would steal $20 million and gamble it all and lose it all from the virtual credit card is unbelievable.
And any money they would get back, this would go to court. It'd be pennies on the dollar. That's usually how that stuff goes. But listen, I guess trying to recover anything's better than nothing. Okay, so sports betting props, very prevalent since sports betting's been legal. We're seeing a lot of college props. We saw a ton, by the way, for the College Football National Championship, more, Mike, than I've ever seen. Apparently in Ohio, though, there's a story that there is a chance, at least, that in that state you may not be able to bet college props. What's the latest there?
Yeah, so the NCAA asked Ohio to stop offering college player props. Some states don't offer them. Massachusetts doesn't offer them, Craig. There was a huge incident over prior to the weekend where BetMGM had taken like 15,000 wagers, I think, on player props as part of parlays, totaling, I think, $200,000 in stakes in Massachusetts. So the regulator wasn't happy, obviously, because that's banned in Massachusetts. They shouldn't have been taking those bets. Took them for a while. They're going to face an adjudicatory hearing. So that's all going to come to play at Ohio. Maybe it's not the same state, but it's how other states are cracking down. So you have the governor agreeing with the NCAA, Charlie Baker, the president, saying they shouldn't have this. So now it goes back to the Gaming Commission, who then put out a letter to the operators saying, you can offer public comment on maybe why this should stand. It's understandable given the threats these kids are facing, why you wouldn't want this. But at the same time, if the FanDuels and DraftKings of the world aren't operating them, Perhaps the illegal offshore books do. And so then the athletes still get the same threat. So it's kind of a tough situation. I think for the books, it would be a PR win if they decided, preemptively to say we're out of this. But at the same time, I mean, if they're not offering it, somebody else nefarious could be doing so. And these kids are going to still face the same threats, unfortunately, if they don't hit their, 25-point prop or their 30-point prop or 10 rebound, whatever it be in a certain game. That's the disappointing part. And there are, integrity monitoring solutions and numbers athletes can contact, if they hear threats, obviously, to make sure those threats are taken care of. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the end of Ohio for college prop betting on players anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, protection. I mean, big schools in Ohio, college basketball, college football. I mean, it does seem there's some correlation going on there, at least in my opinion. But Mike, all right, well, great stuff. Enjoy the Super Bowl. If you have an opinion, throw it out. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, probably, I think the Chiefs, it's probably going to be tight, but just really respected the way the Chiefs defense played against Lamar Jackson. So whatever the spread is now, 2.5, I wouldn't be surprised if the Chiefs cover it.
All right, there you go, Mike. Have a good week. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, coming up next, Larry Krueger's covered sports in the Bay Area for decades on radio, television, YouTube, everywhere else. We're going to do it next.
McCaffrey's not scoring 2 in this game. Should get 1 because he always does. 2 is a lot, and there's a reason why his 2+ is plus 260.
So those are the best bets to make, in my opinion, are the ones where the public might be going the opposite direction, driving the line in a certain way, and you can come back with bigger money at more books later in the week.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
To the big news here. A big push for Georgia to get things going as far as legalized sports betting. And Pat, I don't want to get people too excited. It's not like this is happening this year.
The Senate version and the House version, and then they're going to have to get a couple of people from each chamber together and kind of wrestle out the details of what exactly sports betting in Georgia might look like.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat, as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman
The
Trophy
early
race
line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was good
Late
betting.
Night.
We waited for the 1.5. We got paid.
We
We
did.
patient, didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm so excited to have Larry Krueger here on the show. For those of you who follow Bay Area sports, nobody has been more dialed in on what's going on with all of the teams out there, both college and pro, than Larry. Of course, he worked in terrestrial radio, still working in terrestrial radio for many, many years, but now over on YouTube with the Krug Show. And for those of you who are on social media, you can follow him on social media, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Sports Larry K. Larry, thank you, man. Thank you for coming on the show. I love doing your shows when baseball season's around. The Giants are playing the Marlins and things like that. Thanks for returning the favor and coming here on NewsWire. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Craig. Good to see you. And, man, excited to head to Vegas for the rest of the week. And can't wait to see the 49ers and Chiefs on Sunday.
And congrats, by the way, on all your success, man. I'm just so happy to see you all over the place, and really the go-to person for me in the Bay Area when it comes to Bay Area sports. And you're no stranger, obviously, to sports betting, although sports betting is not legal right now in California. Hopefully that will end up happening in the next 4 or 5 years, 10 years. Eventually it will happen. The Super Bowl, the 49ers are favored, Larry, in the Super Bowl. Let's start there. Do you think that they should be the favorite here, given the experience that the Chiefs have? We haven't seen a ton of line movement. We saw a little bit of pullback to Kansas City. The most bet position on the game, by the way, is the Chiefs, plus 110 on the money line. What do you make of this game as we head toward the weekend?
Well, it's interesting because the 49ers, I think, are plus 193 in point differential, and the Chiefs were only plus 77. And I think if you just watched, it's almost like Vegas is demanding and begging people to bet the Chiefs. I think the public's going to be all over the Chiefs. The Niners struggled in the playoffs against Green Bay and Detroit. The Chiefs went to Buffalo and went to Baltimore and beat both those teams. So Mahomes is playing great. Who should be favored? I mean, when you have the better defense and Mahomes, you would think the Chiefs would be favored. But the 49ers have a much more high-octane offense. And if their offense gets cooking, they can get to point totals that I don't think Kansas City can reach.
Yeah, and that's definitely a change from the way the Chiefs have played. It seems like they play like one offensive half per game over the last 6 or 7 games. Now, on the side of the 49ers here, Brock Purdy's had an incredible season. I think you can't eliminate, how everyone wants to say, eliminate one game. I mean, Purdy had that one game, I think, against the Ravens. If we threw that game out, I mean, this guy has the MVP stats at the end of the season. It's just you got to, call it what it is, and all the games count. They all count the same during the regular season. But certainly at this point, it's fair to say we got to throw that idea that he is just a system quarterback out. I mean, this kid has played fantastic for them. He's got, obviously a lot of offensive weapons and great coaching, but you have to really be encouraged going into the weekend thinking that another big game could be put up for sure.
I mean, there's some magic to Brock Purdy for sure. I mean, you can't call him a system guy because he led the NFL in yards per attempt. So he drives the ball down the field as well as any quarterback in the league. What's been surprising to me is his ability to make plays outside the numbers. I mean, he's number one quarterback in the NFL, passer rating-wise, at throwing the ball outside the numbers. He doesn't have a huge arm, but he throws with anticipation. Many of the traits that Purdy possesses are not, you can't see on a TV screen. He's incredibly competitive. He's very, very smart. He processes what he sees quickly. And those things, he's got tremendous heart, and even though he's a smaller guy, he's 6'1", about 225, which is not tiny. Man, that's Drew Brees size. That's Steve Young size. But the thing that is really surprising about him is his elusiveness. He's got a 1.55 10-yard split. So he gets away from defenders that you would think he wouldn't be able to get away from. And this team really believes in him. So he's done better at taking care of the football in the last couple of games. And if he can, play an efficient game, I think the 49ers are going to have a chance to win.
Yeah, it could be the case. And again, he could win the MVP if the 49ers win. And that leads me kind of into my next conversation is, Christian McCaffrey at this point, Larry, is like kind of a unicorn. And I want to say throwback because we haven't seen a lot of this in the NFL. Now, you obviously remember Marshall Faulk and LaDainian Tomlinson and Thurman Thomas and those kind of running backs who can catch and run. But those days are gone, with the exception of McCaffrey, because anytime the ball's near the goal line, this guy gets the ball and he scores. Can McCaffrey come out of this with the MVP? He is, Mahomes and Purdy are the top two on all the sports betting sites on FanDuel and DraftKings. And McCaffrey is third. They generally don't give MVPs to anybody but the quarterback. Can he buck that trend if he scores, like 2-3 times? Can that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no question. I mean, if the 49ers look at Kansas City's defensive profile and you look at them and you say, okay, they're second in total defense, they're second in points allowed, they're fourth in passing defense. Well, where do they have a weakness? If they do, it's their run defense. They've given up 113.2 yards per game, 17th in the NFL, and the 49ers rush offense is third in the NFL. They average 140 yards per game. So, yeah, if the Niners come out and run McCaffrey and have a successful day running him, he could be that two-way player. Yeah, you could get him isolated on linebackers and safeties and throw him the football. You can hand it to him. He can run between the tackles. He can run to the edges. Roger Craig was the original 1,000 back, and he was a 49er. And a lot of people compare McCaffrey to Craig.
Yeah, no, that's true. I remember his football card. It was like 1,000. It was like the first guy like that, and then I think Metcalf was another one of those too. Yeah, like that's what started the trend. Forgot about him in your backyard in the '80s. Okay, so now let's move over to Deebo Samuel, who you would have to tell me if this is accurate, is the most important player to play on the 49ers. That's what everyone seems to say, and we buy into that narrative. He is incredible, unstoppable when he's on the field. The data is there, I suppose, that says that when Deebo has a good game, the 49ers usually win. Do you subscribe to that narrative too?
He's a very key guy for sure. I mean, the 49ers, I believe Deebo was the favorite to win the Super Bowl MVP at halftime of Super Bowl 54, and then only touched the ball twice in the second half. They can't forget about him. He does have a little bit of a shoulder issue. We don't know what it is because it's not a fracture. I don't think it's a dislocation. It could be a torn labrum. It could be rotator cuff, but there's some shoulder pain there. But yeah, he's still, I mean, the week off is going to help him, and he's a big play guy. And, in the biggest games of this year, Deebo has found, like Philadelphia, he's found a way to elevate. And he's a very difficult guy to defend. So, yeah, I think Deebo is a key guy for the Niners for sure. And he could wind up going off.
Yeah, no, I think so. I had him in fantasy a couple of years ago. It was like my big sleeper. I was like, I think the best pick I ever made, Larry, in fantasy was having him. Okay, so you are going to Las Vegas. We can follow you, of course, on social media, watch all of your great stuff over on YouTube. And here is the big question. So you're going into the sports betting capital of the universe before it was legal here in the U.S. Have you decided on what your favorite play is within the Super Bowl? 10 years ago, Larry, this question would have been who's going to win. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it more difficult. Is there anything specific you are looking forward to over at Mandalay Bay or anywhere else where you're going to get down on anything? Or maybe you're not. Maybe that's not who you are. I don't know. But give me what you like to happen in this game, your favorite play of all.
Well, I mean, I do think Reba McEntire is going to sing fast. So, no, I won't go with that. I'll say this. I like the 49ers over in the second half, whatever that number is, because I think the 49ers have been more of a second half team, and I think that number is going to be low because Kansas City's only giving up 7 points per game in the second half. And then I'll say this. If you're looking for a wild flyer as far as something that you can put a little bit of money down and make a lot, take a flyer on Jair Brown as the MVP. We've seen defensive MVPs before. The Chiefs are going to run the ball a lot in the first half with Pacheco. He's had 10 tackles against the run in the last couple games. He's going to make a lot of plays on the ball. And then he's got a great nose for the football. So if the Niners do have the lead, he could wind up with an interception or two. So you could look at the end of that game. The Niners could spread it around, and then Jair Brown could wind up with 10 tackles and 2 picks, and you could take a massive hit, flyer and make huge money on him winning the MVP.
Well, if he does, I will be the first one to message you after the game on Sunday. Have a great trip to Las Vegas.
Thank
Enjoy it, and really, congrats on all your success, current success. You've had a ton for 30, 40 years, but more success. And I look forward to catching up with you again soon, Larry. Thanks again for coming on.
Hey, Craig, anytime you call, I'm there for you. And congrats on the show and good things ahead for you, hopefully, in 2024.
Thank you so much. Larry Krueger joining us. Follow him on social media at SportsLarryK. Your follow this week for the Super Bowl, especially if you are a 49ers fan. All right, you know who else is at the big game? It is Warren Sharp, and he has some thoughts on the defensive splits versus the two running back sets. We're going to do a deep dive here with Warren. It's time now for the Sharp Report.
The San Francisco 49ers run the ball with two running back sets more than any team in the NFL this year. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs have a lot of experience going up against teams that like to utilize two running back sets, be it 21 personnel, 22 personnel, etc. They just went up against the Miami Dolphins, who use two back sets at the second highest rate and actually lead the NFL in usage of 21 personnel. They also just played the Baltimore Ravens, who rank number 3 in usage rate of two back sets. In fact, of the top 13 teams in usage of two back sets, the Kansas City Chiefs this year have played 13 games against them. So they've got a lot of experience going up against teams that like to use two running backs when they're running the football. However, experience is one thing, performance is another. And the Kansas City Chiefs' performance against these teams when they're using two back sets has been absolutely dreadful. Against two running back sets, the Kansas City Chiefs ranked 23rd in EPA per attempt, 21st in success rate, and 27th in yards per carry. But specifically against 21 personnel runs on early downs, which is what the 49ers love to do, the Kansas City Chiefs defense ranks number 30 in EPA per attempt, number 30 in success rate, and number 30 in yards per carry, allowing 6 yards per carry. This is going to be on Steve Spagnuolo to devise a game plan that's going to be able to figure out a way to slow down these two running back sets of the San Francisco 49ers. It's not going to be easy. They haven't fared well against it, but expect them to see it early and often in the big game.
All right, thank you very much, Warren. And of course, we will check back with Warren throughout the week from Las Vegas as the big game is all set, of course, for Sunday. And stick around because coming up later, we got Scott Farrell live, coast to coast, Gabe Morency. All of our hosts, including all our pro football hosts, are out there as well. Now, I will be back with you after this quick break, but as a reminder, coming up Sunday morning is a special Super Bowl edition of Fantasy Sports Today. I will be live from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., along with Davis Maddock and Matt Stryker and Joe Pisapia. We've got a 4-hour extravaganza. So those of you looking for all the DFS action, prop, everything else, tune in Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. We'll take a quick time out here on the show. It's a farewell for Bill Belichick. He has a special goodbye for all of the fans. We'll tell you what he said next.
McCaffrey's not scoring 2 in this game. I should get 1 because he always does. 2 is a lot, and there's a reason why. His 2+ is plus 260.
So those are the best bets to make, in my opinion, are the ones where the public might be going the opposite direction, driving the line in a certain way, and you can come back with bigger money at more books later in the week.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he's the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
To the big news here. A big push for Georgia to get things going as far as legalized sports betting. And Pat, I don't want to get people too excited. It's not like this is happening this year.
The Senate version and the House version, and then they're going to have to get a couple of people from each chamber together and kind of wrestle out the details of what exactly sports betting in Georgia might look like.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
The fact that they're going to try to run Pacheco down San Francisco's throat as much as McCaffrey's going to get the ball for San Francisco, I think both of them will play well.
I think if the Niners win this game, Scotty, I think McCaffrey is the guy. I think he has a monster game for the Niners to win that. I think it's going to have his fingerprints all over it if it does happen.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy
The early
race
line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
NewsWire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterback, backup
Pharrell
quarterback.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
In the bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was good
Late
betting. We
Night.
waited for the 1.5. We got paid.
We
We
did.
didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Really classy move by Bill Belichick, saying thank you to all of the fans for the many years of success and all the championships that he had. He took a full page out in the newspaper there, and also could be found online, just basically saying, thank you for everything. It was an amazing ride, no question about that. It just shows you in the end, like, Bill Belichick, probably a completely different guy from the one that we see in the media and on TV. Probably an amazing sense of humor, and just now going to take a step back. And look, sometimes people say that about Nick Saban too. I would imagine Belichick deep down just put on a show the way that he did for many, or lack of a show, you would say, for many years in the media. So maybe this is the end of the run for Bill Belichick as head coach. Who knows? Not going to coach in the NFL this season. Thanks to our director, Matt, by the way, our associate producer, Frank, and our producer, Michael, for the great work on the show today. Also, thanks to Warren Sharp for his piece of information on the running backs, and as well as Larry Krueger, who talked about the Bay Area, talked about San Francisco 49ers. In addition, also want to thank our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report today was Mike Mazzeo. In addition, our guest contributor from Sporting News was Vinnie Iyer. And as always, I'm Craig Mish. Now, I'll be back with you tomorrow. I know this is a weird time for all of you who watch the show every day, but I'll be back with you tomorrow, same time, same place, 12 o'clock Eastern, 12 to 1. You want to stay tuned, because coming up live from Radio Row in Las Vegas, Scott Farrell starts his coverage from the Super Bowl, 3 o'clock Eastern today, which is noon on the West Coast. So we have live coverage for you all throughout the day and throughout the night. So make sure you stay tuned to that. And as a reminder, after our shows for the week are done, I got a big show for you Sunday morning. I hope you could tune in, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, our final football show of Fantasy Sports Today for the season. That is this Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. So hope you enjoy the rest of your day. It's a little late for me. I'm going to go get some lunch, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern for our next edition of NewsWire, where it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Have a great day, everyone. See ya.